Mr. Sloan, ready to roll, or you need some time?
Like 1 minute.
All right,
Let me talk to your lovely bride.
Yes, sir.
feel free, feel free.
This lawyer wants to pay off this amount. I sent it to the mayor at one point in time, and I sent it to your staff for approval of that number. I don't know that it needs to be on any agenda or anything, but just get the mayor to say okay again to that.
Thank you.
If you need this room over here, I'll sit on the floor. Mr. Robichaux. If you need this spot right here, I'll just sit on the floor.
No.
I'll sit on the floor if you need me to.
Let's get rolling.
My paperwork empires.
I know, well, that's.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna start our meeting here.
It's-
Welcome to the
that's
Parker Planning Meeting. This is
knowledge.
September
You
12th,
really
2023. Thank you all for your interest in coming. Terry, can I ask you to do the invocation?
Absolutely.
Outstanding, thank you.
Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day that you've given us. We ask for safety for all those that might come in the path of Hurricane Lee. We know what that's like. We ask you for the wisdom to do our job as you would have us to. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Terry. Beth?
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, can you do a roll call, please?
I can. Mr. Haney.
Here.
Miss Hutto. Here. Mr. Robichaud.
Here.
Mr. Stryker.
Here.
Chairman Riga.
Here, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the time where we give an opportunity for the audience to bring anything before the Planning Committee. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to bring to the committee that is not on the agenda? All right, let's get right into it then. Very good. Let's go ahead and everybody get a chance to review the minutes from both the 18th July 11th and August 8th.
I have a recommended change to the minutes from August 8th, page 4, I believe.
Okay.
The bottom of the page, it's paragraph 4, light industrial addition to the LDR. It's the actual term we're using is light manufacturing, not limited manufacturing. So if you just go do a global search and change limited to light, because that's the word that's going to be used in the suggested change in the LDR.
Very good. Good change.
Okay, right.
Thank you, Jim.
And I will tell you, I am attempting to figure out how to do page numbers. It's not liking me yet, but eventually you will have page numbers on these.
Any other suggestions? Any other ideas for the minutes? All right, let's go ahead and let's vote on the July 11th ones then first. Madam Clerk, will you go ahead and take the vote for the adopting of the
Mr. Chairman,
minutes?
I move that we accept both
You need
minutes
a
as
motion.
presented with changes.
Why don't we do this? Very good. Second it. Okay, take a vote, please.
Mr. Haney.
With a brief period of time to review, I would, yes.
And this is
Thank
just
you,
for
Jen.
July 11th.
Just for July
Yeah,
11th.
This is just July 11th. Miss Hutto.
Yes.
Mr. Robichaud.
Yes.
Mr. Stryker.
Yes.
Chairman Riga.
Yes, thank you.
And now I believe we need a motion that
And how
includes
about
the
now with the change for the August 8th meeting?
I move the minutes for August 8th be adopted with the changes.
A second.
Very good. Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Haney.
Yes.
Miss Hutto.
Yes.
Mr. Robichaud.
Yes.
Mr. Stryker.
Yes.
Chairman Riga.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Okay, very good. Ladies and gentlemen, we have two items on the agenda today. One is a development by Culvers, and another one is the Gilstrap property. We'll take the Culvers development first. We have a representative from the Culvers. Sir, if you'll just go ahead and restate your name. Tell us, Brian, thank you again for coming. Feel free to go ahead and tell us what you'd like to, and then the planning commissioners may launch a couple of questions at you, if that's okay.
Honestly, I'm real open for questions, so.
Okay, very good.
You may have.
Looks like you got something in your hand there.
I have our elevation in the site plan.
All right,
Has anyone, have you guys seen this?
yes.
You
I've
might
seen
go
that
ahead
one, but
and.
the other side is
Yeah.
really,
This is,
I haven't seen this side, so this is cool.
Yeah,
It's nice. They
it's a very nice looking building.
Yeah.
And we might, after they look at it, let the
Okay.
audience see it.
Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice.
Lovely new building.
And that will, as you drive north on Tyndall, or Parkway,
Yeah.
you'll have that front elevation for them.
You know, if you wanna just give it to Ms. Bosick and then you could just pass it around while he speaks, if that's okay.
Big piece of homework.
Let the damn crane
Brian,
fill
you,
the
you
house.
prefer just questions,
Sure.
or want to give us a summary or anything?
You need to summarize what he's asking for.
Yeah,
Very good.
I didn't have to do this before, so I can just tell you a little bit about me and the business.
Okay,
I've been in the business for 25 years. We started growing small in Wisconsin. Moved down here, we just turned 7 this June. We want to build up this area. Our brand is slightly different than most of the other ones you'll see when, I don't know how much you know about our business on the beach. Heavily involved in the community. Our franchise is different. It's an owner-operated business. You won't find, I'm actually bringing someone that's grown with me within the Panama City Beach, put her through franchise training. She will be the franchisee, directly underneath my supervision. So it is a different model, and a lot of them are, corporate owned. We are not. We build the building, we buy the land, so we're automatically invested into a lot of it versus just putting someone in. So I just, anything else you may have, you can let me know.
Are you a privately held company?
Yes.
And the owner of the land has requested the development permit.
Yes. My partner and I will be the owner of the land. We'll have 2 companies.
What's the name of the company?
M&M, Florida Investment.
M&M Florida
Investment.
Investment.
And we will lease to our operating company, which my partner will be involved in.
very good. Mr. Madam, we actually did get copies of your FDEP plan. We saw that that had been approved. It looks like our Public Works had approved it, the Police Department has approved it. Looks like the the Fire Department addressed a couple of issues and then approved. The one thing I would tell you is that that is a CRA, sub-area 3, right guys? Sub-area 3 right there. And the city's really interested in ensuring that those areas become sort of the jewel of the city. And it looks like your building's very tastefully done.
Yes.
And one of the, it looks like your company has gone through the CRA sub-area 3 requirements for foliage and tree and
I know I'm
lighting.
working
and
with Robert. We did have Lawnscape do an architectural plan, or landscape design plan for you guys.
Mhm.
But if you look at our building now, this is what we want. Our buildings, we want to stand out from everyone, so that's not an issue.
So that landscaping, that's the final McCoy right there? Okay, very good. Like pots along each of the roads. The one thing I did note is that to the back of your property there, it looks like you've got some nice foliage there, parking. One thing we do request in the CRA area is that you do a really adequate job of ensuring that the parking is shielded from the other buildings that are, perhaps in this case, it would be to your west. But it looks like you've got a fair amount of shrubbery going in there. It's hard for me to tell the size and everything based
On
on
the
this.
west, I believe there's a water retention on the
Yeah.
property for the, I think maybe it was a gym. of some
I
sort
see,
behind.
I see the water retention in the south, and it stretches from the east and the west.
I
There's one
believe
to the
that's
back.
gonna be our design one,
Okay?
but the one that you're referring to in the west, where our parking lot that went up to the water retention for.
Used to be the bowling alley, but it's the gym or whatever.
Right, so what we wanna basically shield from what is there to our customers,
Yeah.
until some other developments happen, so.
Yeah.
If you look at sheet 4, it's more, the retention structure to the west, which is not on his property, is more easily.
Gotcha. So that's a dry retention pond you're looking at, Jim?
It's a
There?
Well,
It's a wet one?
Yes.
That'll have water in it? Okay. Good deal. But still trees, I see,
Correct.
shrubs, looks like container shrub plantings. Looks like it's gonna be nice. Very nice. And it looks like the engineer, Anchor Engineering has, they had some questions. It looks like everything was addressed at various dates throughout. Looks like the setbacks are proper.
I have a question on the setbacks, and it's only a question, 'cause I don't think it's a problem. I noticed that the parking intrudes into the setback on the west side. I think that's fine, I think that's okay. I just noticed that that's the only intrusion of in any of the setbacks, and it's just like a driveway, I guess.
Where was that, Jim?
Look on sheet,
Is that the whole length of the west parking lot? West side?
3. If you look at the west side, the setback lines are the dashed lines,
Okay,
and that's a 7-foot setback, and the parking intrudes into that setback. It looks like 5 feet maybe. And again, I don't know that that's a problem. I don't know that that's not allowed.
I think the setbacks are for your structures. Yeah, that way you could have driveways
is
going right up to the
literally
road and
the only
everything.
thing I
yeah,
Yeah.
alright.
Very good. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Madam? Sure, come on up.
Mr. Madam, you can go ahead and have a seat while he comes up to ask the questions.
Joe Huffbauer, 5033 Sharon Drive. No, I was actually going to ask you some
Okay,
questions. if you
sure.
don't mind.
Yeah.
I see that you do have a stormwater pond.
Sure.
I don't know if your engineer told you or were aware of it, but there is a maintenance plan and testing that will be required from now on for these ponds. Have
Yep.
you included that in there?
Are you referring to testing all
All
of
the discharges, right?
Right.
Have you included that as part of your program?
To be honest, I'm not entirely sure. I do it on the beach. I haven't tested.
Okay,
I believe it's every year.
all right. And but you maintain. Now, how long
Yeah.
have you been operating on the beach?
7 years with a company now, 25.
Okay. Had you looked at using that one that was pre-existing?
We did, but I believe Dollar General uses that as well.
So you can't have the
Correct.
capacity?
Yeah, I don't believe the runoff would.
And there was no way you could do an infiltration gallery?
I think Price. Or like, are you talking about Hunter? Yeah.
I just want the folks to know that there will be future maintenance. Now, I'm sure his
Oh, yeah.
business will last forever, but if it doesn't, we will have to pick up that maintenance for all these ponds we keep putting in.
Right.
And so we need to be aware of that when we make these decisions.
Yeah,
And it's
I understand.
costly to the public.
yeah.
I understand.
So you can't close down. You know?
You better not. The food's too good.
It might be
Um,
plan too.
All right.
You-
So as long as you meet, that's all I want to make sure that you're considering.
I got it.
Thank you
That-
very
You're
much.
welcome. Thank you.
That is something that we've done before with a backup stormwater easement.
Mhm.
That could be
I
a
think we still
requirement.
have to
of
maybe
the,
it off.
Okay.
Yeah, just have to make sure the flow.
For future maintenance, sort of like a bond, like we do with a subdivision?
Basically, it says he's gonna maintain it, but if he doesn't, and the city has to incur any expense, then.
Isn't that a state requirement that I have to maintain them? That's what I was under the impression was it.
The city unfortunately has been, saddled with a few properties that have not done the maintenance, and so.
Sure,
The
okay.
city's had to spend public funds to try to
I
address the
understand.
problem, and
Okay.
that's what we're talking about
Okay.
here.
Yeah, I'd be willing to, any kind of agreement, we'll take care of it, so.
Very good. And I'm just looking for Elizabeth's review on this here, for stormwater runoff. She's got about a half a page on it. And it looks like, there was one question about a couple of different cleanouts, and that item was addressed. They did an analysis of the soil there, chipley and hurricane sand. They talked about the runoff, and they indicated here that they believe that was adequate for what the the drainage was. But I think we're talking about future maintenance, right?
Correct,
That
yeah.
was your concern, Joe,
Wow.
future maintenance? Yes. Very good. Well, Mr. Sloan, when there's a concern like that, what is required in order to meet whatever concern there may be about future maintenance of a stormwater pond like that?
Well, typically, we do what I term as a backup stormwater easement, which basically obligates him to comply with the law and to maintain the facilities on the property, in the event that he fails to do that, and in the event the city had to do something that incurred the expense, then he would have to pay the city back for doing that.
Okay.
But the obligation is his.
Yeah.
Right.
And as long as he does what he's supposed to do, then
Very good.
the easement just sits there.
Okay. All right, and it's not gotten past us that our city engineer has given us about a 18 or 20-page review on just about every aspect of this structure, has requested certain changes. They've responded quite timely and gotten back to them, and everything that there was a question, she responded that the applicant had gotten back and given the dates, and and then she moved from conditional approval to approval on everything. So, do we have any other questions from any other commissioners at this time?
This is the best proposal I've seen, the best
Oh
coverage
my
of
gosh.
anything I've seen since I've been on this.
Yeah, it's very complete,
Done right.
including the drainage report, which was quite extensive in terms of how they're gonna, where the water's gonna go, the volumes. And Elizabeth had a couple of different questions about it, and they got back to her very quickly, so, thanks for that. Sometimes the response times are a little bit slow, but these were exceptionally good. Okay,
May I ask a
please do.
question? Can you give me the name of the franchisee?
Emily Matthews,
How do you spell that?
EMLI.
Emily?
Yeah, Emily,
Emily?
sorry.
That's okay.
MATHEWS.
Okay, just pretty much standard Emily
Yes.
Matthews. Okay, great, thank you.
And she lives here locally, not in Parker, but in town.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have a FDEP stormwater mitigation plan that was approved. We have all the documentation that is completed, and any of that was not completed was adhered to and then completed. It's in a CRA subarea 3. They've got a very, very good, that last page shows all of the foliage and the fencing and street lights, everything that they're gonna do in terms of shielding the parking, the wider sidewalks. And Anchor has approved all aspects of the project. So at this point, I guess
I'll
what I'm
make a
looking for
motion.
is, thank you, Liz.
To,
Thank you.
Did you?
hey there,
Thank
how
you.
you doing?
Thank you.
I make a motion to recommend it to city council for approval.
Okay, very good.
With the standard conditions
With-
plus the backup stormwater.
Yes,
Very good.
what Mr.
Madam
Sloan
Clerk,
said.
can we take the vote then, please?
Mr. Haney,
Yes.
Ms. Hutto,
Yes.
Mr. Robichaud,
Yes.
Mr. Stryker,
Yes.
Chairman Riga.
Yes, thank you. And of course, with the recommendations that Mr. Sloan had put forth. Very good. Well, thank you, sir. Really
Thank you,
appreciate it.
guys.
Thank you for
Nice meeting you.
improving our city. I'm looking
We
forward
look
to
forward to it.
my first cone of Custer. Very, very nice. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right, very good. Thank
And,
you.
if I could just get the Culver's files back before everybody leaves.
Okay, very good. Let me just ask Mr. Sloan about that. So some of the information that came over from the architect indicated that it was proprietary information. So it was only shared to the planning commissions because of the requirement associated with us having to review it in order to approve it. But Carly was a little concerned about putting it on the public website because the architectural designs had a very specific daunting statement on it that said this information is not to be shared.
Do
So,
you know what information it was?
It
Carly,
was-
can I tag your brain for that? Ma'am?
It's everything.
So
put it in-
all of this,
In the whole email.
so it would have been all of this information, which is everything that they included,
He needs to
including
hear
their
this.
blueprints.
Hey, don't leave yet.
Uh,
You need to hear this.
We're just discussing about the proprietary piece that we.
Proprietary nature of some of the information that some of the documentation had indicated could not be shared with the public.
And-
Normally, we do that for developments so that the public can review it and things. So I'm asking our city attorney, Mr. Sloan, to what level is it required that we comply to that? Because the commissioners must review it in order to digest it and then approve it. And then oftentimes the citizens of Parker want to know what's going to be built in their area. So were all the documents stamped with that statement about not sharing it? Or were those, it was my impression it was the architectural designs of the building
It was,
that,
I believe it's just the architectural
Okay,
So,
because Culver's sort of has a uniqueness about the way that they construct, okay.
see, we're not even, right now, we're technically not even on the, coming up list.
Mm-hmm,
You know, I have everything, you know, from our equipment, everything's on standby. Right now, what we're working with right now is, I have the same con GC that built my restaurant here, I'm using him as well. Very familiar with Culver's, can do it with his eyes closed. It's finding the coverage up here.
yeah.
So a lot of it, I'm having to bring people in from out of town, which I'm paying, you know, so we have a meeting on the 15th to go over the budget, the proposal.
Does corporate Culver's put that restriction on you, the developer, to not share certain proprietary information with the public?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Some of the stuff, yes. But, you know, as soon as I get the okay that and I finalize our budget, you know, I was planning to put an coming soon sign.
Well,
in the park.
so
It
at what point
did-
does this, it's very difficult to review this
Right.
if it can't be sent electronically to the commission members.
Right,
And I had to come down here
and pick it up, right,
and read it at this table.
right.
At what point does it become a public record?
Well,
That's a good
If I
question.
may, just to let you know, I couldn't obviously contact you, so I erred on the side of caution, and all of the emails came in an encrypted format, just for
Okay.
information.
I'd like the opportunity, Mr. Chair, to look at that tomorrow. And
Let me do this, now I can give it to our city attorney,
I should think
right?
so.
So this is everything,
I have a
You-
small,
here, this is everything that
Yeah.
was given, that was designed, and
That's
I'll
the
just give
only
you the whole
piece you
folder.
don't, that's the storm, that's the,
That's everything,
Yeah.
and
I'll
then
take
this,
a look at it
and then
tomorrow.
this is Elizabeth's report, you probably have a copy of that already.
he
Very
does.
good, okay.
Yeah.
We were more curious, but also making sure that we weren't violating any
Sure.
you know, we want you as a partner, and we're excited about Culver's coming to town. Wanted to make sure that we weren't doing anything that was gonna harm
So-
anybody along the way.
No, we have all the corporate approvals for that location. We already have a franchise agreement signed.
Very
For
good.
that location, everything is good to go. Right now, we're just in the bidding process and approval process with it.
What kind of a time frame are you looking to start the project?
Hoping relatively soon. I was hoping to start already.
Yeah.
Just like I said, finding the people to come down on their prices. Right now, they're sitting almost after the storm prices. And so it's been a challenge. But I think we've got a good coverage. You know, so like I said, I'll be in contact with you guys if you guys have any information you want me or a card I can call.
Our city clerk is gonna be your contact, Kimberly Riga.
And I'll follow up with you on the 15th after my meeting and
Okay.
give you guys kind of a better time.
That sounds
Very
great.
good. Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you.
and just so you'll be aware that one of the concerns of this commission and the city commission is the timing, because your development permit is for only 6 months.
Okay, so the full development is for 6 months.
No, the development permit, requires substantial
Oh, yes, okay.
improvement to occur within that
Okay, yeah.
6-month period.
Okay.
You can extend that with the permission of the city council, but
No, we'll be.
we just wanna make sure
good
you're
within
gonna
that
move in
timeframe,
that
sure.
direction.
So,
Okay.
Very good,
We need
thank
to
you,
set-
sir.
So, we will have a regular city council meeting on the 19th. You're going to contact me on the 15th and let me know how things are going. We could then add you on the 19th possibly if you're ready to move forward at that time.
yes, I know Robert was planning, I think Robert was planning to come to the 19th.
Okay,
Like I said, I'll follow up with you on the 15th.
okay, that sounds great.
Very good, thank you, sir, appreciate it.
Yeah.
I think that's it, thanks
Think we're
again.
good. Thank you, Culver.
Thank you, you too.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay, the second thing on the menu was, it looks to me like the Gilstrap project is really just requesting division of land.
Can we have them
Is
come?
that, come on, are you with the Gilstrap project, sir? Very good. If you don't mind just sort of giving us I have a relatively small.
My name is Manish Chaudhry. I'm with Capital Holdings. We're the owners of the property. This is
Okay.
Claude Elkins. He works with the engineer.
Okay,
So he's gonna pass out just a quick, little drawing of what we're proposing to do. I think we came to you guys a while ago to do a development of about 18 units. We were going back and forth and.
Thank you, sir.
There's too many going back and forth. So, that was for about approximately doing 18 units with a development order. After going through that whole process for the last 2 or 3 years, we said, let's just simplify it. And what we're proposing to do is just do a simple lot split, and on each lot, if we can do 3 units from 18, now we're going down to 6, and that's all we really wanna do.
Mr. Elkins, if you wouldn't mind, could you take the extras and maybe give those to the audience members, so maybe Ms. Fusak and you guys could pass them around?
So if you look at the bottom half of the drawing, it's just 3 units,
Of the front?
on each parcel, basically. So, yes,
So then the remainder of that property would just be empty?
it would just be a big backyard.
No, a very big backyard.
So we really have about 1.3, 1.4 acres. You want to split it right down the middle. Okay, so we're going to have about 0.67
Yes.
acres each.
Yes.
And the land development rules in an MU1 here in Parker allow you to build up to 15 dwelling units per acre. So that would take you to probably about 0.67. So you're looking at about 7 or 8. So you're well within that for sure.
Yes.
Let's see.
At this point in time, are they just here on the lot split,
Yeah,
or have they
That's all we've
submitted an
received.
application for development?
No, sir, we have only received a request for information
wanna-
regarding the lot
Well,
split.
what we're trying to do is seeing what you guys would approve.
Yeah.
We wanna go the simplest route possible. We
And
don't wanna get a development order, because that's what we tried to with the 18 units. Now we're just doing a simple lot split facing these units on the road. And
Well, a
doing
development order would be required.
Even on
Yes.
three?
To build in?
Yeah, because this is in Parker, anytime it's beyond a single-family dwelling,
Okay,
and this is gonna be triplex, so that would be a major development.
so.
And that would require a development order.
So would we need retention and all that on this, or?
No, it wouldn't necessarily need a retention just to get a development order.
Okay.
Really, it's going to depend on what the structures are going to look like in terms of where the stormwater is going to go. Right now, unless this is an unusual parcel of land in like a flood, but it's all in X, is that right? This all in the flood X?
Well, can I interject?
Sure, Joe.
But if the property is 1 acre or more, they're gonna still
Joe,
require-
can you come up? I'm sorry,
I'm sorry.
we just have protocols that we have to
Yeah, sorry.
follow.
Joe
That's okay.
Huffbauer, 5033 Sharon Drive. If the
Thank
property is
you.
1 acre or more, they're still gonna need a 10-2 permit. which
It's
is-
not gonna be 1 acre. It's gonna be, they're asking for a split, it's gonna be
Well,
0.67 each.
they're gonna look at the split if it's single ownership, which is what they're talking here as a single property. So they will need a 10-2 permit, which will require them to certify stormwater, so you may, so I don't wanna leave
Yeah,
them with an issue that they don't have to have retention. You might wanna check that out with your engineer, because they will look at it as a property split, but you're still a single owner.
As of right now, he's just asking for a property
I just
split
wanted
to
to
go into
get-
0.67 acres. And right now, there's nothing within the Parker land development rules which would prevent you from building a triplex there. It's in an MU1 district. In terms of flood mitigation, you will need to check into that, but that would require an engineer's report to look at the land. Generally, on something like this, we would need some form of a drawing, an idea of how large the buildings are gonna be, where the setbacks are gonna be, what the elevation is going to be, that sort of thing. But what we've been presented with right now, there would be nothing that would prevent you from building these 2 structures. It's in the right land district. You're under the requirement of about, I think you could have about 8 or 9 on this particular property per 6.7 acres, if that's what it ends up being. And then all other building requirements and Florida code would apply. But what we've been presented so far, there's nothing that would prevent you from building the structure.
Split the land.
And if I may, this was noticed as just guidance. This wasn't
Yeah.
noticed
Yeah.
as a development
Right.
order or
It's,
anything like that. It was just guidance for
there would be a
proposal.
development order, and then when you deed the property, and you probably need some help here, this may need, depending on who's gonna own the land, it might need a partition deed, as opposed to a warranty deed or a standard deed. Is it your intent that the people who live in the property will own the?
No.
Oh, okay, so
Like
you
an
retain it, oh, okay, more like an apartment.
Yeah.
Okay, then it won't a standard deed, okay.
You will need to submit a development order application.
Okay.
And as the chair said, your engineer will need to probably, give you some guidance on what you need to do for stormwater. Our engineer will review whatever your engineer does and the application, and, I think you heard on the last, application that she renders a long report about the application itself, and she'll work with Mr. Elkins or whoever to get it in the format that we need to have it.
Okay.
But I think conceptually, the chair's telling you 3 structures should be able to be built on there, but you may have to worry about
Our concern is, we just wanna take the simplest route, you know,
Yeah.
the path of least resistance. I mean, that's why we dropped from 18 to now 6, and, I mean.
You've got the space,
So, we just wanna do what's the simplest and
yeah.
really the quickest. It's been, I think, we've worked for 4 years, and
Mike?
we're just trying to move forward.
I would, I mean, the next steps would be to go to the county zoning authority and go to the public records. You've got to split the land.
Okay.
And then you'll show what the division looks like. But right now, 0.67 acres, if you're gonna split it in fact in half, in an MU1 district like it is, you easily could build a triplex there. There is a floor area ratio requirement, but I doubt it's gonna be more than, I'm doing quick math here, 0.67 acres, about 29,000 square feet, so it's gotta be, your total floor space is probably gonna be less than 29,000 square feet for three flats, right? So, or for three dwellings, so as long as it's under 29,000 square feet, you meet the FAR of less than 1. And MU1, you have certain height restrictions, but I doubt you're gonna go above that either.
They're very
Yeah,
simple.
yeah.
So when
is
you
a-
submit your application for development permit, you will also need an application to do the lot split, because this is just for guidance.
Mhm. That's how it was noticed, sir.
Yeah.
Is Gilstrap actually paved? Or is it just
Yeah.
crushed
Yeah,
asphalt?
I drove by today.
Is it paved?
It's,
Is it crushed asphalt or is
no,
it paved?
it's asphalt.
Okay, I'm
It's a
thinking
dead
about-
end. It's a dead end.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm thinking about the wrong street, and I'm sorry, I'm ignorant about the subject.
Okay, so we can go to, I mean, before we do the lot split, we would submit the application, is that what it is for your approval? So we can split it, is that what it is?
You'll need to submit a formal application to do the lot split.
Okay,
Once the city council, if the city council approves it, and based upon a recommendation from the planning commission, then you would go to the clerk of the court, record your deed to split the lots, and you get your 2 addresses or
right,
however many you need. But that would be the first step, is to submit a formal application to do a lot split.
okay.
Yeah.
And then, once we get the lot split, or formal approval, we'll get the lot split done, and come back to you for.
With
a
your,
development order, we'll apply for a
Development order.
development
Yeah.
order, correct?
and it's a large development because it's more than a single-family dwelling, so it would come back for this committee. And our job is really just to go through the LDRs and make sure that that it meets the proper setback and doesn't, exceed any of the limits that are there. And then at that time, you'll also have, for example, a flood mitigation plan. It's less than 10 acres, so that's gonna be a self-certified document that your engineer will fill out. And we'll review that, but nothing that you've presented to us so far would show us that you could not do this project. I mean, it's well within the guidelines.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you,
Thank you,
gentlemen.
guys.
Appreciate your
Thank you.
time. And thanks for this.
Yeah.
That helps. Very good. Okay. All right. Okay, so we're still working on the light manufacturing addition to the LDR.
Leave it open, sir?
No, you're fine.
Yeah, it's gotten a little toasty in here all of a sudden.
There was like the sound of a television or something.
And I tried to turn it off, that's why I closed the door, it's out in the lobby.
Gotcha.
I can't find the buttons anywhere.
I wondered what that was. I'm like, whose telephone? What y'all watching?
There is a, I'm sure there's a remote somewhere, I have no idea where.
Yeah, but
So
nobody
next
can
time,
find the
it will be off.
No.
I didn't realize it was even
Well,
on.
I'm probably on video standing on the chair, so I.
Trying to figure, there's a button somewhere.
I couldn't find it.
So, Jim, you're up with regard to any new developments regarding the light manufacturing
Okay.
addition?
Did you get a copy of this?
Should, yes, sir, certainly, thank you.
This is the third time we've discussed this. It basically, at the last meeting, I was given authorization to work with Mr. Sloan to come up with wording. The idea was originally presented as a change to both the comprehensive plan and the LDR to allow something that we're gonna call light manufacturing. I'll talk about that more in detail. The suggestion was don't leave the comp plan alone, do it strictly within the LDR, and that turned out to be easily doable. So this next iteration was strictly changes inside the LDR that would allow for this new land use called, it's not a new land use district, it is just an
Yeah,
allowable
business.
a conditional use within general commercial only of certain types of manufacturing.
Mhm.
So the three things that these changes will do, I hope, is first of all, we need a definition for manufacturing, and the best one that I've got is the one that the state uses. They have a specific definition of manufacturing. More about that later. Then we need to define, as you might imagine, that definition is enormous. Hundreds and hundreds of different categories of manufacturing. We need to adopt that definition by reference, but then we need to create a new subset of manufacturing, which I chose to call light manufacturing. And rather than go through each of the hundreds of individual categories that are within the state's adopted definition, I decided to produce a list of properties that the business must fall within. It must be able to operate inside of these constraints to be considered light manufacturing, and that is rather well defined as well. Lastly, it's to establish light manufacturing, again, as a conditional use only in certain commercial properties. So you can't do it everywhere.
But you're outlining all the conditions, right?
Yes.
So if it meets all of those conditions, then it wouldn't be like a variance or anything, as long as it meets the
It would still be a
temperature.
conditional use, it would still be require approval, because it'd have to come, it'd be like a development, almost like a development, they'd have to come before us and show that they meet the 7 or 8
Those requirements
conditions.
for odor, for temperature,
For-
that
for a
it
bunch of
indeed
things.
is gonna be,
Exactly.
you know, a certain PSI.
But it gives them rather really clear guidance as to whether or not what they want to do is doable.
Yeah.
And that's to me, we owe that to business people. They should have clear guidance as to whether or not they need to pursue something and spend a bunch of bucks on it, only to have it denied because there was something that they weren't aware of that wasn't allowed.
Yes.
And that was my attempt to make it just absolutely crystal clear, or as crystal clear as possible, of what you can and what you cannot do. First of
So-
all, the definition of manufacturing.
I just want to go back to that real fast. So, Jim, I think the processes that you've outlined are really clear, crispy clear. So you're saying, though, that even if they meet each and every one of these, they would still have to gain approval? Because it seems like, why would we not approve them if all 7 of those items, they met all the items?
If someone wanted to build a commercial business in a commercial district, what approval process would they have to go through? Not manufacturing, just a restaurant. That's a
Yeah.
commercial enterprise.
Okay, so
What
the
approval process?
okay, so it wouldn't just be because it was light manufacturing, it would be the normal process,
It
and they
would
would
be
tell, okay,
the
I
same,
get that.
it would be the same process that Cabela not development.
Culver's,
Culver's
yep,
just went through.
I got you.
Plus, they want to do light manufacturing, so they have to meet additional requirements.
The ones that are stated
The
here.
ones that are stated.
Yeah, I get that, okay.
It's just a way to make sure that,
But because it's conditional use and not a permitted use, it has those additional conditions, and it's not an absolute right for development.
precisely, if somebody does something that we did not foresee, that the natives would be absolutely up in arms over.
I get it, yeah.
We'd want the city council to have the opportunity to vote on it and say, sorry, but no. And that's the reason it's conditional. You can't just automatically say, yep. And you stop and think about it, Culver's, their approval was really conditional. They had to meet a bunch of requirements. I mean, they couldn't just say, well, we meet all requirements here, give us our building permit. They have to kind of show us they did it. Just a little bit on the definition of manufacturing. The system used by the state of Florida is something called the North American Industrial Classification System. It eliminates the argument about what's manufacturing and what's not. If it's part of the NAICS system, there are 440 different types of manufacturing. And in the Florida code, they're broken into into sections. And the Florida code says anything that falls within sections 31 through 33 is considered manufacturing. That covers more than 667,000 individual businesses, of course. We're not going to have anywhere near that. So what we would like to do is, rather than pick from inside of those hundreds and hundreds of 6-digit codes and saying, well, we'll let this code in but not this code, if we do that, those codes constantly change. They not only just change the number to realign them with something else, they add new codes all the time. So we will be constantly updating the LDR to reflect the actual digits of the codes. So rather than do that, we're just going to say, if it's in the NAICS system, it falls within those definitions, sections 31 through 33, it's manufacturing. Now, we do not allow manufacturing. Manufacturing is a prohibited use of land. We do allow light manufacturing as a conditional use of land, as you'll see as we go further down. So this is a new subcategory we're going to call light manufacturing. And as I said, rather than dive through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of 6-digit codes, I've come up with a section of parameters that business manufacturing processes must meet in order to be considered light manufacturing. And we'll dive into those right now. So it's basically, there's 7 of them, I think. Yeah, well, doesn't matter. Condition 1, it's any wet or dry processes not generating industrial waste that has to be treated before it's released into the Park or sanitary sewer system. Condition 2, processes can emit no obnoxious odors as defined by Parker Code 26-101, which is a nuisance ordinance. I got some additional things in there, but that's not going to be part of the LDR. Number 3, processes not requiring temperatures above 600 degrees Fahrenheit, pressures above 300 pounds per square inch gauge. Notwithstanding that, if your process runs at 1 atmosphere or atmospheric pressure, any temperature is allowable as long as no waste gases are produced.
Glass blowing and all the
Glass
things we've been
blowing,
talking about. Okay, good.
ceramics.
So how would this apply to the crematorium in Parker? How would that apply to it?
It's not manufacturing.
You're making ashes in a sense.
I would have, it's
Yeah.
a good question, John. I'd have to look in the
I love
NAICS directory, but I don't think crematoriums are. I will look it up.
That'd be something to be.
Yeah.
They're
I love it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good. Wow.
Sorry.
What are we making there, huh?
We always need a straight man. I'll look that up. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Number 4 is hazardous materials categories. If you're in hazard class, and hazard class is defined by federal law, hazard class 1 is explosives, 2.1 is flammable gas, 2.3 poisonous gas, 4.2 spontaneously combustible materials, 5 are oxidizers, 6 are poisonous or infectious materials, 7 radioactive materials, 8 corrosive materials, or 9 miscellaneous hazardous materials. So you cannot involve any of those hazard class materials in your manufacturing process and be considered light manufacturing. This is the number 5 is the noise standard. That noise standard is already defined somewhat in the Parker 26-101 nuisance code, specifically in items 14 and 15 within that code. I added some additional conditions to that, and it's basically to cover there's noise as an average, and then there are random, incredibly loud but very short duration noises. In the industry, they're known as LEQ for average, and
Now, Mr. Robichuk, we do have noise limitations. For example, I know that when the lumberyard was thinking of building certain things, I don't remember exactly what the decibel levels are, but I'm just trying to save you some work. I believe that we already have noise limits in the LDRs.
We do, but
you know, and after 10 o'clock, they have to go to a certain level.
And those are incorporated as well, but these are on top of that. And the reason it was specifically for the LMAX number, with that you can have a process that's as quiet as a kitten walking to its litter box all day long, but 3 times a day it produces a Hiroshima-like blast.
Yeah.
Well, that will not be captured by any averaging gear.
Okay.
It will right underneath the measurement. So the LMAX is a very short integration time, and you can't exceed 75 dBA, that sort of thing. Now, these, I'm not hard over about including these. Perhaps the existing nuisance code is adequate. I would not fall on my sword on that one. And again,
I was just trying to save you some extra line.
Right.
While you're talking, I'll find it, and then I'll read it to you, and then maybe it'll
I
apply.
have it right here. But it's very lengthy.
Well, you're talking about 26-101. He's looking in the LDR.
Oh, yeah, there are.
There's a definition
For noise, yeah.
Yeah, the one in 26-101 is far more detailed.
Okay. And it sounds like you were gonna apply it just to light manufacturing, so
This is all
everything
about light
else would be all other businesses, and then this would be
that
light
would apply to
manufacturing.
everything.
I got you,
This would
I
only
get it,
apply to light manufacturing.
I get it, very good.
Let's see, and is that the end of it?
No,
It's right
let's see,
there.
noise, sound levels, yeah. Yeah, it looks like item 5, and then you had A, B,
Okay,
you know.
then we
for-
get into the definitions, the definitions that we're gonna have to change in the LDR. And oh, by the way, I intend to make a motion that the committee approve the concept with any changes you'd like to see, and that you allow me to continue working with Mr. Sloan to come up with the actual final wording of the actual changes to the LDR, which I'd be prepared to present at our next meeting.
That would be terrific. You've done a great job already,
So,
so.
okay, so we're almost done here, so,
We're gonna go on to the next page, though, because I do have a couple of questions about that, right, when we go into
so we're on
LDR
page
changes.
4, right?
Mm-hmm,
There's a couple of things that have to be moved around in the LDR to keep things in one place, as well as maintaining a consistency in the definition of manufacturing, harping on this NAICS sectors 31 through 33. We need to add a definition of manufacturing. There currently is not one. And this was lifted basically right out of the state's definition. Business engaged in mechanical, physical, or chemical transformation of materials, substances, components into new products as defined by the NAICS system. I provided a definition of the NAICS system, just in case anybody wanted to know what it is. It's a very well-known standard. It's used extensively throughout the industry. Now we get into where we're gonna allow this stuff. We have to change some of the sections in section 4. I look disorganized, it's because I am.
Looks like it's on page 410, 454.2, allowable uses.
I'm missing my marked up version of this.
I may have another one there, Jim.
Okay, so starting on 4.5.3, we need to add a definition, basically, skip ahead here.
Conditional uses, maybe?
Order 17, added maintenance. On 4-20, we added the NAICS definition. On page 4-10, we have a new section. 4-10. Here we go. So in most of the other sections, there's a when you get into land use districts, there's an allowable use, a conditional use, and a prohibited use section. Well, in the case of general commercial, we skipped the last two. So we need to add those sections in, and that's what the rest of this is about.
I'm glad you caught that. We skipped prohibited uses, didn't we?
And we skipped
And
conditional as well.
Yeah.
So we need to add a new,
Now, the one thing that may have covered it, and I'll have to ask Mr. Sloan this, so it says subject to any overlay district restrictions. So does that, so would MU1 and MU2 show those?
So the overlays that are talked about there would be if the council imposed some specific overlays, such as if they came up with an overlay for sub-area 1 of the CRA.
I got you.
That's what it
So like CRA in a commercial district, okay. So,
that
so
would be an overlay.
that was a good catch, Jim. Because I was looking for the prohibited uses in
okay,
commercial.
so look back up just a little bit.
Yeah.
So on page 4-10,
Yeah.
paragraph 2A,
Mm-hmm.
we need to add, the last sentence to A, does not include manufacturing or light manufacturing, because it's not an allowable use, it's a conditional use. So we need to be specific, that light manufacturing is not an allowable use, it'll be stated later, it's a conditional use.
Conditional use, okay.
So that's one change. Then we need to add two sections, 4.5.4.3, which are the conditional uses, and 4.5.4.4, which are prohibited uses. And I've got all the verbiage worked out for that.
Okay.
Okay, now the clarification.
So,
of the
just
sub-area.
question for you. So you're believing that right now, the way it's stated, that general, let's see, you believe the way it's stated right now, all low-intensity commercial would include this?
I want to make it clear that low-intensity commercial is not light
Is not.
manufacturing.
So
They
we're
are two
gonna
completely
add-
separate things.
Okay, so so you wouldn't put it into allowable uses, you would put it
No,
into?
I'd say, no, I'm saying it's not an allowable use.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it would actually have to be in the prohibited uses?
It would be in a conditional use.
Okay,
So it's, well, it could be in prohibited uses. You know, I put it up there because there wasn't a prohibited use section, but it could be in a prohibited use section.
because the way I'm reading this, A through H are allowable uses, so it wouldn't go there. It would just go in conditional and then prohibited.
Well, the phrase not to include manufacturing is kind of a clarifier that, you know, you'll see it again later as a prohibited use. I mean, we don't have to put it in both places.
Okay.
I did just so, to make it clear.
That goes back, my question a few meetings ago. Is manufacturing not allowed? It doesn't say it's prohibited.
Well, it will.
That's what I'm saying.
It
That-
will
this
say it's
addresses
prohibited.
it.
Yeah.
It will
Right
say it's
now,
prohibited, and light manufacturing is a conditional
Right.
use.
to be honest with you, it is prohibited because it's spelled out in MU1 and MU2, and then when we get to commercial, under allowable uses, manufacturing is not included. That's why I was asking Jim a very specific question. Does he consider, commercial, low-intensity commercial activities manufacturing?
No.
But it's not.
Oh.
So what we
And
do,
that
we
needs to
allow
be made
low-intensity commercial activities, shopping centers, public and private recreational facilities, office buildings, public institutional, public services, and on, not manufacturing. So simply because it's not in allowable uses in commercial, it's disallowed. But it probably would be best for us to spell it out as
not.
you, as
I
he-
should make it
as
as
he's doing.
clear as possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Make it as clear as possible. Okay, so, so the new section, conditional uses under this section would be light manufacturing, provided that in any sub-area of the city area, the property must have direct vehicular access to state or federal roads, without the use of any city streets for deliveries, including raw materials and finished products. The Part B is the total enclosed area of all structures within all properties associated with light manufacturing businesses may not exceed 22,500 square feet. I had to come up with a number, and I was asked, well, how big will we allow 170,000 square foot buildings as light manufacturing? That seemed a little absurd to me, so I think, okay, what's a reasonable size building for what we're thinking light manufacturing should be? And I arbitrarily picked a 150 by 150 foot building, so that's where the 22.5 came from.
Now, there is limitations because we have the floor area ratio, which is 1 in commercial, 1.0.
Yeah,
And then we also have the 60-foot height restriction. And then we also have impervious area.
yes.
Restriction.
Those all still apply.
Okay, but you're thinking that we still need a building square foot?
How big will you approve? There is no upper limit right now.
Yeah,
Are we
yeah.
gonna limit it to 50,000 square feet? That seems a little large.
Well, right now, the reason I'm wondering if we ought to back off of that is because if it was a restaurant, they could build right up until they met the threshold for impervious or
But a restaurant is
threshold
not
for FAR.
Yeah, restaurant's not like
We are
manufacturing.
allowing in something that initially the city fathers didn't want.
Yeah,
They wanted this to be a bedroom community. Well, we're kind of waking up and smelling the Farthingnigan now.
yeah, yeah.
We gotta let it in.
Well, let me ask you another question then. 22,500 square feet's a big building. Should it be smaller? I mean,
That was an arbitrary number. I picked a reasonable, what I thought was a reasonably large building that could accommodate virtually everything I could think of that would be something that would fit into a seaside community
Yeah.
and serve a public.
because that's a
need.
big building. That's a huge building.
100 by 100.
Yeah, 150 by 150 is a huge building.
Give me a number. I mean,
Well,
I'd like to see the property where you plan on building, building like that.
no,
Yeah.
he still has to meet all the covered areas. I mean,
Correct,
you,
correct.
if you have enough land, you can build a light commercial, you meet all the other requirements, you can build a light commercial business, but all the structures on that site cannot exceed 22,500 feet. But you have to meet all the other requirements as well. You're not getting relief from any of those.
Maybe just for perspective, I looked up CB sales, again, that's a relatively small, 5,580 square feet.
yeah,
Because I'm having a hard time figuring out what 150 by 150, but.
that's a
25
big
bucks.
building, isn't it?
That's big.
150 by 150.
Yeah.
That's
That's
huge.
your supermarket size, I would say.
Yeah.
Something like grocery outlet maybe.
Hey, I'm okay with what you've selected, 22,500, particularly if you've got metal building manufacturers making them in that, the dimension or something of that nature. And the fact is that it looks like it still has to come before a committee for approval.
And-
So if they decide it's
Right.
not consistent with the area, I think that would probably be
And
okay.
like everything in the LDR,
You can file
you can
for a
apply
variance.
for a variance.
Yep, yeah.
Getting a
That's a
variance
good
is
point.
tough. It's
Yep.
supposed to be tough.
Yep.
But, you could apply for a variance. I think that was a good starting point. I would entertain any plus or minus to that.
Yeah. Yeah, and we don't want Parker to be a factory, loaded with factories, because that's not what we envision.
Okay, so now let's get into the individual
So,
sub-areas.
so I'm okay with the 22.5 then. Everybody else is, okay.
So the thrust of the individual sub-areas. Sub-area 1 is the city center, right? Sub-area 2 is down towards the Tyndall Bridge. Sub-area 3 is going up Tyndall Parkway to the north. It was my sense, based on the discussions, a year and a half or so I've been on the planning commission, that we didn't want anything like light manufacturing period, or light manufacturing in sub-area 1.
Correct.
Sub-area 2 and 3, yeah, why not? That was just my sense.
Big
So
commercial
I wrote this
road, yeah.
in that way, so that basically in sub-area 1, light commercial is not light manufacturing, sorry. Light manufacturing is not an authorized use or a conditional use. 2 and 3 it is, and the actual wording that I came up with, but you don't have a copy of this, but the wording was,
So this is sub-area 1 where you have the prospect of light manufacturing?
not if we change this. Well, right now,
Well, but you
there is no such thing as light manufacturing.
Right.
Right now, there is manufacturing and it's not allowed anywhere.
But if somebody wanted to buy a piece of property out here, like where the old, what's the thing, something USA, but I just remembered as Uncle Sam's nightclub. If they wanted to buy that piece of property and put a ceramics business in there, then they can't.
Well, then
And it's,
do
I
we
mean, this
want
is
to?
business 98, so business is where the businesses were built.
And Ms. Huddle, that's where I was going. Do we want to codify that restriction? It's no light manufacturing sub-area 1, or do we want to back off on that?
I don't
Well,
know. I
if we
don't
look
think
at
it should be
sub-area
restricted.
1, I'm just gonna read it directly to you. It says, "The sub-area is intended to be the main core of the community redevelopment area and to redevelop over time through a combination of public and private investments into a traditional downtown with a mixed-use area including retail, restaurant, office, and residential." It already restricts it in a CRA because that's a CRA sub-area 1, and it specifically says retail, restaurant, office, and residential.
But that's no different from sub-area 2 and 3.
No.
Well, not substantially different anyway. That same phrase is used in sub-area 2 and a slightly different one in sub-area 3.
Yeah.
The bottom line is, do we want, if we create this light manufacturing category, do we want to allow it in all CRA sub-areas? Or do we want to
Well,
say hands
One
off?
thing about sub-area 1 that you included in here, though, is the access. In order for it to be deemed light manufacturing, it has to have direct access
To the road,
to a
main road.
state or federal highway.
Yeah.
So haven't you addressed Ms. Hutto's concern that you could have that light manufacturing in sub-area 1 so long as
That comes directly
it has
off of
direct
business
access
98.
to a state or federal highway?
Actually, this may be a change in the wording, but I've changed that to any sub-area in a CRA property must have direct vehicular access to a
Right.
state or federal road,
So
not just sub-area 1,
That would apply across the board.
to all CRA sub-areas,
Right.
but not
And
to
if
general
it-
commercial.
If it
That's not in it.
applies to all sub-areas, including sub-area 1,
Right.
then her concern would be
Then-
addressed because somebody could do that in the old, whatever that property
Not
Right,
is.
it's
if
business.
we
Used to be
stipulate
Passport
that
USA or something.
no light
Right.
manufacturing in sub-area 1,
But Ms. Kim's
which is
property.
what I'm asking. Right now, that's how I intended to move forward, because I figured that was the sense of the committee.
Jim, I think we're kind of covered though, because aren't we saying this is conditional and the
Right.
council members have to approve it? Any light manufacturing project would have to be, so if somebody comes in and says, I wanna build in sub-area 1 and I wanna build whatever, and if the council members say, that's not our vision, then it's already conditional.
But I
Yes,
mean, it
however,
lasts-
it is not codified. I want something that a developer can look at and say, hey, I wanna do this. Ooh, I can't do that.
Well, Except if we're making it conditional, that's not gonna play either.
Well,
'Cause
you're not shot down before you start. It's conditional in that you have to meet requirements
I see what
and
you
you
mean,
still
yeah.
have to get the blessing, but that
Yeah.
is no different from any other commercial building permitting process.
But
My
it says-
opinion is that we're covered with it being conditional, and the council members would have to approve any structure that would go in that would be light manufacturing. So maybe we need to back off of the CRA one area.
Okay, does everyone agree with that?
No, but, yeah, because I mean, to say specifically that in CRA one, you cannot do any of this.
Okay,
So if a sale business wanted to come in and bought the property where Bonnie sat,
Okay.
or Mr. Lawrence's property over
Okay.
there where they wanna put in a glass blowing thing, I mean,
I can easily change that. It would be basically,
See-
pretty much the same criteria for all three subdivisions.
And what I would just say is that, remember, the whole concept here was that seaside community, there may be somebody who wants to build birdhouses and glass blowing
Yeah.
and pottery. If that's can't be built in CRA one, then that kind of defeats that whole concept. That would be a legitimate business, like what I would perceive as light manufacturing, no smokestacks, no heavy
Okay,
industry.
okay. All right, that's an easy.
And I think we're covered because the council members you're gonna make it conditional upon the approval by the council members to say, hey, that's our vision, or it's not.
Mhm. Okay.
and I mean, if you look at where you've got available properties as well that are being sold, properties that are, potentially could be bought in the next 5 or 10 years, there's quite a bit along Business 98 over here. But then you're restricting that you wouldn't let someone that made sales, or someone that did blown glass, or, I don't know, ceramics, or,
Yeah, I mean, even
you know.
even if you're gonna manufacture like gift baskets or something.
Yeah.
That's light manufacturing, but
Yeah.
that's seaside community stuff,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So you wanna, that's what I think they envisioned. I think when they heard manufacturing, it was much bigger
We
than
don't want
that.
somebody making batteries or anything of that
Right,
nature.
well, and see, that's what I'm saying, Jim, you've got this thing ratcheted down so
It's-
well with
it's-
no
yeah.
corrosive materials and the temperature. I think you're protected.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
I
so
do.
Yeah.
I will basically, it will basically, all sub-areas will pretty much read the same.
Yeah.
Light manufacturing is a conditional use.
Yes.
Yes.
In all three sub-areas.
I like that.
As well as any general commercial lot.
Yep.
Now, question 2, do we want to enforce the proviso about access to a state or federal road?
I think
In
that
all
makes
three
sense.
subdivisions?
Yeah, because we've
Yeah,
got too
I
many
think that's-
residential districts specifically in here, and we don't want 18-wheelers driving down people's roads. I think that would be
Okay, well,
intrusive
that's
to
the way
their
it's
quality
written
of
right now.
life.
So the only real change I have is the back off on the sub-area.
So it's actually gotta be on the main road. I think that's actually a
Well, and
fair
that's-
turn, I think that's a
That's where all
fair,
the CRA pretty
Yeah.
much is anyway, so,
Yeah.
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 I appreciate your thoroughness and your over thoroughness when it comes to
You know,
all
I
of
feel
it,
sorry
but-
for people to come before us, and you know, it costs money
Yeah.
to draw up things, to buy property, draw things up, develop a plan, only to come before a body like us or the city council and say, no, sorry, you didn't look
Get
close
shot
enough
down.
at the CRA
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
I would rather it be in black and white,
Yeah.
so that when they do their due diligence, it jumps out at them.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so what I hear is, the only,
All,
Can we have public comment?
yes, absolutely.
Sorry.
But I think Jim was mid-sentence right when you said that, so
no,
What-
go ahead, I was
go
gonna
ahead,
I was gonna
Pat.
summarize.
come on up,
Well, I
Pat.
didn't know if you were gonna say you want direction to move forward, so,
Actually, I do.
yeah. Well, can I comment first though?
Oh,
Please, come on up, come on up. You sounded like
when
you
they,
was done.
when they were finished, I was gonna say we need to have items from the audience, so, are we good?
Pat Fosick, 1344 Stratford. Kudos to Mr. Robichaud for what he's done. I agree. I think all of you have said that. I do have a couple of questions, especially based upon this most recent discussion. Let me go to your documents first, though. Again, very good, very thorough. Let me see what I have in the overview. Is there another manufacturing business other than CB Sales that we know of?
Good
Just
question.
curious.
Darn good question.
Because, and it's my understanding too, Mr. Sloan, please correct me, that they're grandfathered in. Was trying to
Right.
create this opportunity for glass blowers, pottery, whatever. However, that being said, when I think of a glass blower, especially over here in Mr. Harris's building, I think of a place where I can go in and take a course, and I can watch somebody blow glass, and I can do my own, or I can do my own pottery.
Sure.
Is that manufacturing?
Yes.
It is.
But I'm not selling it.
No.
See, that's my thing. I don't think it is.
You're not producing a product, you're
I'm
instructing.
participating in an
Yeah,
activity.
but most places like that, like if you go to the glass place downtown, you can go in and they do courses and stuff, but then they all sell product
Well,
as
so
well.
it's a
So, I mean,
for
you're
what
gonna
walks out
tie
the
their
door is
hands by
manufacturing.
saying,
It
you
might
can
be-
have classes here, but you can't sell anything,
Well, no, that was not
you
the
know,
intention.
but I mean, that's,
So
because they do,
if all they do is instruction
yeah.
and they don't produce a product that for
If
sale,
it's just a
that's
school,
not
then that's,
manufacturing.
yeah.
Okay, so even if I go in and take a class and I blow something and I wanna sell it, because I wanna make a little bit of money, so they sell it for me, that's manufacturing.
If you,
I
if
would
you,
say yes.
if you have leather coming in the back door and belts going out the front, that's manufacturing.
No matter who does it, yeah.
Right. If you
But
have
is it?
leather,
Because
if you have
then-
leather, it's, Jim actually reviewed all of this with us, and it is the classic case that you're changing the material.
Right.
So for example, if you wanted to make belts and leather items and wallets and hats, if you wanted to knit a hat, that's manufacturing. So that was what we were trying to prevent. That was what we were trying to
Restrictions on.
have, prevent the restrictions
We
on,
don't
because we
want them
didn't
bringing
want
the-
that kind of a thing
Yeah.
to be removed from our potential city.
We don't
because
wanna
those
bring
are
in the
kinda
hides
friendly
in and then doing the
manufacturing.
chemical and then all of that,
Right.
you know, that result. But if you bring rolls of leather in and then you make shoes and you push them out the front,
Yeah,
that's
or even
manufacturing.
See, I
adjust.
never would have
Like
considered CB
manufacturing.
sales as manufacturing.
Me either.
but, yeah.
So, but
Well,
it is.
It
Well, by
is,
definition,
technically.
because they
You got
bring
two
in fabric
six-digit
and,
codes.
and,
Yeah.
and sales leave. And even if you wanted to make dresses or pants or shirts, it's
Yeah.
manufacturing. So,
And again, I understand manufacturing, if the business employs people, they have to meet OSHA guidelines, et cetera, et cetera. But if I go into that building and take a class and decide I don't wanna take my piece of art home, I wanna leave it there and sell it, I didn't get paid, I don't have to meet OSHA. Yes, there's a kiln in there that's gonna fire my pottery. I mean, I'm thinking of pottery shops and classes where you do that, and
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
they sell, but I don't consider that manufacturing.
But
and
the
I,
definition does.
Yeah.
And the definition is a business engaged in the mechanical, physical, or chemical transformation of materials, substances, or components into new products as defined in
Okay,
section 31 through 33.
okay,
So it doesn't matter who made it, doesn't matter which hands touched it, it doesn't matter if it's even sold, it's being manufactured.
but Pat, is your point that you wanted to ratchet it down more
Well,
or
here-
expand
I
it?
guess here's my point, especially looking at CRA one, sub-area one.
Yeah,
We're right here, I always get turned around, we're right here, we got a little two-lane highway out here.
right.
We've got a four-lane divided over there on Tyndall Parkway. They all used to be Highway 98 when I grew up here. That little glass blowing business, that pottery, that, you know, whatever, that craft store that I can go in and sit and we have a sewing circle and we make stuff and we sell it or we take it home. That to me is the kind of stuff that I would like to see in CRA one. And I
Yep.
know I'm just one resident, but I want us to really think about this. When we open up CRA one to manufacturing with trucks that are gonna come in and pick up the glass, pick up the belts and ship them, yeah, they have to leave on Highway 98, but again, they're going on a two-lane highway where we have people maybe walking from their residences over here to the sports park to walk their dog.
That's what
We
the
don't-
sidewalk's for.
Across the street, we don't have frickin' crosswalks,
Yeah.
you know?
Sidewalks.
And I get it, Pat, we're trying to meet a happy
And that's
balance
why
here.
I'm saying, why can't we limit CRA one to no light manufacturing? Because of the location, because of where it is. It is in our little community. I mean, if I had a coffee shop, and again, yeah, most all of us all live over in Donaldson.
you know.
If I had a little coffee shop that I could walk to, would I feel safe walking across Tyndall
You
to
know
get to
that-
Bonnie's to buy coffee?
Because the
when-
visions, the businesses I think we're perceiving is, you know, the guy that is the woodworking guy, has got the saw out front.
Cabinets.
Yes.
He's a manufacturer.
And
I-
he's grandfathered in.
Well, he's grandfathered in, but what about the next guy that wants to build one right here?
But,
I don't
that's
wanna,
my point, is
you know,
that
like
what
that.
we want in this area? We have all of Tyndall Parkway.
if it's particular, if it's, see, but that's what Jim is doing,
I
is
mean, we've got a
he's,
tree
that's what
service
Jim
down
is
here.
doing, he's putting it as a condition. So,
But-
so the council members will review what it's going to be. And when we review this stuff, we look at truck traffic and size of the
Right.
parking lot and all that stuff. And if it's what you're talking about, where it's gonna be overly encumbering,
Yeah.
then the answer will likely be no. But if it's
But
more
council
like,
can still decide to offer it.
that's
Period.
true, but,
End of
but,
discussion.
but they're the ones who ultimately created the CRA in terms of that
Well,
vision. In terms of what they want.
2006. I mean, the CRA is a whole nother thing because it's not been talked about, it's not been discussed. Has anything at all been done with the CRA?
We've talked about it extensively, and we just finished the LDRs, and they ultimately reinforced, every one of those people reinforced through multiple meetings
Right.
that CRA was what we wanted.
Right.
So, and I think they're on board with this light manufacturing, because at the end of the day, we don't want to eliminate dress manufacturers and wallet makers. That's the kind of thing you see. We just
And-
got back from vacation somewhere in Gatlinburg, and guess what? That's a great little community with a
Artistic.
On
million.
downtown Harrison Avenue, are there manufacturings on downtown Harrison Avenue?
There
Yeah,
are,
hat
there's
makers
a
and
guy
stuff
who
down
makes
there.
bicycles, and there's another guy
Bicycles.
who makes kayaks. That's the thing we're trying to
On
not,
Harrison Avenue?
not Harrison Avenue, I was talking about downtown St. Andrews,
St.
but,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Well, there are some on Harrison Avenue, sure.
yeah,
Well, I just
Oh, yeah.
feel like
there you go.
giving that, I understand it's conditional, but then we're giving an awful lot of leeway to the council who just decided to change land use in a CRA from residential to commercial. That's a lot to me. That's an awful lot for our Harrison Avenue, our whatever we wanna call it. To me,
Yeah.
that's big time.
Yeah.
That's a huge, that's not from commercial to MU1, that's from residential to commercial.
There were a lot of things that
Across
went
the
into that
street.
decision, though. I mean, you got a graveyard across the street, you got a wood processing plant across the street.
And will he be there 15 years from now? Who knows?
Probably,
I mean, it
yeah.
sort of seems like we're setting our goals with what's already there. Instead of, the CRA is designed to eliminate blight.
Yeah, yeah.
And we seem to be saying, well, because there's this cabinet guy over here, we can have another cabinet guy in there, really?
Yeah.
Because that mobile home park is there, even though a bunch of them got destroyed, yeah, we're gonna let her put 5 more in there.
I think
I don't wanna
all
be
of us.
argumentative, I just want you to-
Listen, I don't see that as an argument. I
Yeah.
like the debate. The reality is that, and you would not lose your opportunity if you've got a council member that wants to say, look, I don't want some big smokestacky industrial place going in. I think what we're trying to do is eliminate an unintentional consequence. And the unintentional consequence is, right now, we've got a lot of people that may see us as a seaside community and want to bring some light manufacturing, which makes sense to our community, and right now they can't.
Yeah.
And I think it makes sense to bring that to all the CRA areas, because Mr. Sloan just pointed out that when you go down St. Andrews, that's a CRA. And look at what you've got there. You got restaurants, you got a kayak manufacturer, a bicycle manufacturer. That's the kind of thing I would love to have out here.
Yeah.
And I don't want to shut that down.
Okay.
My opinion, and I
Understood.
admire your opinion
And
as well.
I just wanted to be able to express mine, so thank you
Yeah.
for that.
I
But I do
appreciate it.
have another couple of questions. And I know I'm way beyond 3 minutes, so
Oh,
thank
no.
you for your
Well,
candor. Yeah. Jim, on and this I guess is to the entire group, on the first page of your purpose of change, we talk about processes not requiring temperatures above 600 or pressures above 300 PSI gauge. I know what PSI is. What about a scuba cylinder?
I'm sorry?
Filling a scuba cylinder. For example, at one point,
That's not
98
manufacturing, not manufacturing.
Not manufacturing.
Filling a scuba cylinder is not
No.
manufacturing anything. You're
but we're
compressing,
gonna have over 3,000 PSI,
you're not manufacturing anything, doesn't even come under that category.
okay?
Well,
Just filling an air tank.
using,
I'm just making
using
sure.
processes,
We're taking air and we're making it compressed air.
That's not manufacturing.
We're taking sand and we're making it a vase.
It's not, I like the, I like the humor, but it's not
I
manufacturing.
just wanna make sure, because that's something that I do see in a seaside community. And if that's the case, I'm good with that. I just
Yeah.
wanted to bring that up,
well, no,
because I believe at
I
one
don't
point,
think, I agree, I don't think that that would be considered manufacturing.
okay, Pier 98 used to have scuba down there. I don't know if they were filling cylinders. And they also had flammable gas because they would pump nitrox, which is enriched air. So they had 100% O2.
Nitrogen and oxygen.
Yeah.
Store right there
It's
in the
not
gas
flammable.
station.
Yeah, it used to be. So again, I'm just making sure when I saw that. Okay. On page 3 of 4, I guess, sorry, I did mine double-sided. 3 of 4, where we're talking about changing, on the bottom of the page, changing 4-721 to clarify sub-area 1 may include low-intensity, which of course that's gonna change now, but looking at the paragraph that is currently in sub-area 1, there's a difference between the proposed text and what's currently there, and I didn't know if that was intentional or if it was just an error.
No, it was intentional.
Okay, so we've eliminated, it says the community redevelopment area to redevelop over time through a combination of public and private investments into more traditional downtown, including low intensity commercial and residential. We left out,
Retail, restaurant, office, and
office.
And
residential.
that was because
Yep.
low-intensity commercial includes those. If you go to the definition of low-intensity commercial, it includes all those
All
things.
of that.
You should always avoid defining
okay,
things in two places.
Thank
And
you
that's
for
the only
that.
reason I did that, is strictly to
thank you,
streamline it.
cause I didn't look into that definition. And I think that's all I have. Thank you for your indulgence.
No, thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate, man, thank you
Appreciate
for
the
your
time.
comments. Very good. So have we landed there, guys? I mean, have we landed that we should, treat the CRA areas the same?
I would, let's see, I've got one change that I have a note on, and that's to basically, make all sub-areas the same as it regards light manufacturing as a conditional use. And that was really the only substantive change.
Very good.
Mr. Sloan has provided some other, changes to me, and I will take those changes, incorporate this change, get back to him, and we'll come up with a final version, which will basically be a list of the actual
It'll be an
changes.
ordinance that outlines the specific changes in the language, so you'll see that. There are also a couple other things that I have to include
Appreciate
in
that.
the LDR amendment, so
Okay.
it'll have
Well,
a number of things.
Mr.
All the
Sloan?
rationale and the boiler, not the boiler, all the rationale why we did it, that will not be in the ordinance.
Very good.
It'd be nice if we could, I would be happy to forward something like that to the city council when they consider the ordinance. But,
Well-
so right now, that's my marching orders.
Yeoman work on this. I mean, this is excellent. Mr. Sloan, Mr. Robichev, thank you. This is, I think, what we wanted to land on, and not Liz, Beverly.
Sorry, you call me whatever you wanna call me, friend.
Just got
I
have a
answer
sister-in-law
to
whose name is
Elizabeth.
Leslie.
I
You
don't know
would
why
like
I'm
her.
Elizabeth.
No, from Anchor, not
I know.
Anchor on the brain.
But thanks for being passionate about that, because I do
Well,
think it makes sense to bring
passionate
that back to
and
CRA one,
Yeah.
because
We're
we
gonna-
envision those types of light, things as light manufacturing to be in this area.
think
And it's
it would
hard to
be-
divide artisanal endeavors from
Yeah.
other endeavors.
Yes, it absolutely agree with that. Okay, very good. Jim, anything else, or?
That's all I got.
Thank you. Outstanding work. I know that this is tiny compared to what you have done, but here, Mr. Sloan, if you'll take one of those, if you'll pass that down. Here, give me, I may have given you one with, did I give you one with writing on it?
I don't have one
Yellow
with
writing?
writing.
Okay, very good.
No, sir.
Okay, very good. Here's the drill. We decided that if we're gonna have this type of, and actually, I'm really glad that Pat brought up what she brought up about classes and all that stuff, because at the end of the day, any business, businesses that have classes, at the end of the day, when you're determining where the parking spaces are going to be, it has to do with how many people you're expecting.
Right.
So I listened to what each of you had to say regarding are we going to go out and count the number of employees? Well, we're not. However, there are ways to go ahead and track that, and part of it is how many employees, if you're building a new business, how many employees are going to be there. So I went into the Bay County Zoning and Development Code, and I also went into the Panama City Development Code, and guess what? On several occasions, they simply do identify based how many parking spaces were required based on the number of anticipated employees. So I don't think that any longer should be something that we should eliminate. So for example, if we look at Panama City, they identify a number of employees when they're talking about mortuaries and funeral parlors and homes. They also identify number of employees if they're talking about businesses and professional offices based on the number of parking spaces that they would require. They also, and guess what? Panama City has light industrial uses and heavy industrial uses in their parking requirements, and they also identify how many parking spaces based on the number of employees. So I kind of came back to that because at the end of the day, and then Bay County does exactly the same thing, only theirs is for daycare facilities and nursing homes. If it's nursing homes, they actually say based on number of employees and number of included nurses. So all of that said, I'm going to come back to where it originally landed, and I'm going to recommend that for parking requirements, we go ahead and under light industrial, where retail space is offered, we ask for 1.5 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet of gross floor space. That makes sense to me because what you're talking about there is retail space that's offered. So you're going to have, you're going to have parking spaces for people that are going to be purchasing from that facility.
Well, how can you apply this to, say, such like an auto body repair shop or auto repair shop where the people are not there with the vehicle?
This is only for light industrial or light this is only, that's actually in the parking section, John, and auto body shops that's something different.
Okay.
Yeah, that's different. This is only going to be for light industrial, and the anticipated belief here is that the world is changing. When you've got manufacturing, whether it's light manufacturing or otherwise, you may not have any customers roll up to the front door ever because of the internet, because you might, everything you ship out, how many of us use Amazon? How many use Walmart.com? That is, so anyway, what I'd recommended here is that for light manufacturing, we go ahead and say 0.5 space where retail space is not offered, that it would be 0.5 spaces per 1,000 square foot of gross area and 1 space for each employee.
Yeah.
So I think that pretty much covers it. So if you've got light manufacturing and you've got 6 or 7 employees, that's why I said and, not or. So if you've got retail space that's offered and you've got 15 employees, where retail space is not offered, so it'd be 1 space for each employee. Okay, so if you got 15 employees, you've got at least 1 space, and then you've got to meet the disabled American requirements, which would be another space for that particular case.
I like these numbers, because
So-
my thought had been, there's gotta be something like if they said, we know we'll have 20 employees,
Right.
then a multiplier of sorts, because you have to have enough for, I don't know, parking for Christmas party, or
Absolutely.
something of that nature, even if it's a,
And
a
the-
big industrial thing.
The one thing that I might recommend,
Table on page 5-35?
sir?
Are you talking about modifying the table?
Yes.
I think you-
Yes, that's
Just
exactly
adding
right.
to-
Modifying that table.
Modify it as well.
Yeah. So,
So you're substantial, even though, where you're offering retail space and otherwise would be a commercial activity, you're significantly dropping the parking requirement for light manufacturing from 4 spaces per 1,000 feet to 1.5 spaces per 1,000?
Well, yeah, 1,000 square, we could up the number, but the concept, remember, was that we didn't want to use the employees as the mechanism for, we could up the number if you feel like it needs to be.
Well, I'm just asking the question because commercial is 4.
Yep.
And if commercial would include retail, then
We could up the number. The primary concept of this isn't necessary. I wouldn't get focused on the number I selected. What I would focus on is if we've got a light manufacturing where retail space is not offered, I think we need to look at the number of employees. That was really the key takeaway here. So if that number needs to be 2, or if for light industrial where retail space is offered, if that needs to be 4, then we'll crank it to 4. But the concept is that where retail space is not offered, and there are going to be a lot of those because of internet-based sales and everything, that we don't laden the number of parking spaces based on the size of the building, because you may not have. I mean, you know, if you had, to use your example, if we had a 22,500 square foot light manufacturing facility. In this particular example, there would have to be about 40 spaces, okay, and that's where retail space is offered. So parking spaces are expensive to build, and you know, being that Parker is,
why pave a big area if you don't need?
why pave a big area if you don't
to-
need it? That's exactly
Why
right.
not have
It'd be
green
just the
space?
opposite. It would be, you'd have 1 space per 2,000 square feet, so you divide 22,000 by 2,000, that's 11. So it'd be 11 parking spaces.
Well, if you're talking about where retail space is not offered,
Correct.
I've got 0.5 spaces per 1,000 square foot
Right.
and 1 space for each employee.
Again, I would caution you against going with employees because when they have today, may not be the employees they have tomorrow, and the parking criteria needs to be standardized. If you look at the chart,
Mhm.
it's based upon seating capacity for restaurants or other activities where you have seating like churches and whatnot, not based upon the number of people that are gonna sit in those seats. And that's your problem with employees, in my opinion. You're gonna have somebody roll in here and say, well, I have 1 employee.
Well-
And now
Next
the
year they've got
city
10.
is going to give them a permit for parking, and tomorrow they hire 25 employees.
Yeah.
But we could fix that with one simple thing, that all parking for the business has got to be off-street. So if they lie to us and say, I'm gonna have 1 employee, and that ultimately hire 25, then the joke's on them because all parking would have to be off-street.
But what's gonna happen is the other 24 spaces are gonna be on the road.
Well, that's what I mean, it's gotta be
They have to
off-street.
put it on their property.
So that,
But they're gonna park on the road.
or we could say that, you know, all parking has gotta be on site, and that's where I put there. All patrons and employees must have parking available on site.
Well, the entire parking calculation is based on off-street parking, not allowing you to use
No,
the street.
there's a couple of examples where they can be off, but your point's well taken, Jim. There are a couple of examples, but at the end of the day, maybe we could change that verbiage so that all I'm suggesting is we have 2 municipalities at which what we're trying to do is determine the number of parking spaces based on the need for any given facility. And the need in a light industrial environment is going to be based on how many employees they have. It's because that's going to be who pulls their car in and parks there. So at the end of the day, we really just need to make sure that if a new business is being built, that those employees have a place to park, and that we don't request them to overbuild the parking space, especially here where impervious land is important. And we have 2 direct municipalities, both Bay County and Panama City, which have already used that standard for based on number of employees. So I think it must work.
Is this parking you're talking about, is it pervious or impervious, or what do you see?
It would be whatever parking lot they want. They just have to provide a parking space for, you know, their employees.
So it could
Could be
actually
grass
be
or
grass or
gravel.
something like that? Somebody
Oh,
could park
sure.
in?
Oh,
So-
yeah.
So. if
Yeah,
you-
whatever-
if you
whatever
can't-
your
Like the
designated
scenario you
parking
just talked
space.
about, the guy says he got one employee and, 2 weeks down the road, he's got 20 folks working for him. He's got all his cars parked on his grass.
Yeah.
Is that a violation of, what, we're talking about here?
You passed out last time, Mr. Chair, the Bay County Planning and Zoning.
Yeah,
So
but I also then looked at
there's
Parker.
nothing in
I'm
there
sorry.
about number of employees.
Oh, yes, there is. Which one did I give you?
Page
That-
25-3.
Let me take a peeky boo.
2 spaces per 1,000 square feet, yada, yada, yada.
Let's see here. Bay County, Bay County, Bay County. Well, let me just show you here. This is Panama City.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's
No,
okay.
it's fine. I probably need to be interrupted
Here we go.
sometimes.
Oh, I
That's
didn't
just
give you,
a
I didn't give you the
background.
full one. Here it is. This is Bay County daycare facilities, 1 space per staff member plus 1 space per 5 children. Nursing homes.
Yeah,
one
that's
s-
under public assembly though.
It doesn't matter what it's under. They're trying to determine the number of spaces in
Well,
a
but
given
under
business.
the applicable commercial
And then,
And under
manufacturing.
industrial, non-retail business, there's nothing in here about number of employees.
if we look here, all my point is that they have building facilities where they look at the number of people and the number of employees. So we look here, for example, nursing and similar institutions. So you've got 1 space for every 4 beds plus 1 space for each employee. So they do use that as their standard. And then if we look at Panama City, and this is actually Panama City. So we look at mortuaries and funeral homes, 1 per each employee. Guess what? Because you're gonna get a varying degree of parking requirements in that kind of an area.
But in both of those cases, Mr. Chair, you're under health facilities.
It doesn't.
You're not under
He's
industrial.
just saying,
It
he's just
doesn't
saying they
matter.
base it under
It doesn't matter.
employees.
All I'm saying is
There
that
are
they
places
use
where they base it
employees
on
as the
employee.
mechanism for determining how many parking spots.
Yeah.
So for example, here, light industrial uses, 1 space per employee. Heavy industrial, 2 spaces per 1,000 square feet plus 1 per employee. So there's directly meets your requirement if you have to see somebody else doing it. But the concept here is simple, that they use the number of people that they anticipate will be parking in those spots. So, and I don't want to go to a light manufacturing facility and say, okay, you got to have 4 parking spaces for every 1,000 square feet when they have 20 employees and no patrons. It's a waste.
Well, I would just caution against it. Again, comparing apples to apples from the Bay County, you would not have accounting employees, and I'm just afraid that your city staff, who's already understaffed, is not gonna go out and count up the number of employees
I actually,
that a light manufacturing place
When-
claims to have, so they'll all be on vacation that day.
well, the simple requirement would be if they hire more employees, then they have to build a bigger parking spot.
But once you give them a development permit based upon a static set of rules, you can't change the rules and say, okay, well, if you change
You haven't
the number
changed the
of
rules.
employees tomorrow, then
You haven't changed the
tomorrow you
rules.
gotta build a bigger parking.
You haven't changed the rules. They've changed their parameters.
I'm sorry, I see this as a solution in search of a problem.
In solution in search of a
I
problem.
don't see a problem with the way it's written right now. I would grant you that for light manufacturing, perhaps a 2 per 1,000 square foot of building area might be more appropriate if
Yeah.
retail is not.
If retail is not present.
Call Mr.
What's
Robichaud,
the
he's
Bay
making.
County?
I love him.
You want the Bay County one?
Oh, I got it right here in front of me.
Have
Yeah.
that put on his,
Yeah, it's Bay County in, commercial manufacturing industrial establishments not catering to retail trade, 2 per 1,000 of gross floor area. I could see that, but I can't see beyond that.
So you just want to, but the size of the building may have nothing to do with the number of parking spaces required.
Well, there's, Parker is not incomparable in size to Panama City or Lynn Haven or so on
Yeah.
and so forth. So I think it should be, just passed to the council in order to decide on what their parking is based on what kind of business they're putting in or what they're actually doing there.
Yeah.
That would be my opinion on it.
Well, if we come back to something Jim said, though, if, we've had businesses say, how big does the parking lot have to, like Culver's had to have 45 spaces, but that's an easy one. You know, they know
Right.
how many patrons they're gonna have.
Sure.
They know how much traffic they're expecting. What I'm trying to do is figure out a different way, other than the size of the building, to appropriately determine the number of spots needed in a world that is changing, where we've got internet sales. So,
Can we ask?
Diane, did you want?
Items from the audience. She's been waiting.
Come on ahead.
My Diane, 1521 Dover Road. My thing is, if you have bought the property and you built the building because this is what you're going to do and you had 10 employees, you must go with the rule with what you got. Now, businesses come and go. So my business blew up, forget it, and now I gotta sell it. I do have somebody interested in it, they're gonna have 20 employees. Do you allow them the fact that they get to rebuild the back of the building or something to put the parking in? But you still have your original parking.
Yeah.
So you don't have this problem again, you know, somebody coming in. If the building is this big, you don't know.
Yeah.
They might have overbuilt it thinking they
Yeah.
were gonna get really big.
It's a really good point, because we had you probably remember, we had Mr. Fo's restaurant come to town, and they expanded their business. And then they had to show us that they had an appropriate number of parking spaces.
Sure, because I was the one that said,
Yeah.
Planet Fitness,
Yeah.
they all have this whole big
Yeah.
parking lot. You
So at the
use
end of the
what
day,
you
we made him show us that he had the appropriate number of parking spaces. And that's a really good point. I think on your point is that I think businesses are gonna change all the time. I'm concerned that we're gonna be forcing people to build these giant parking spaces that aren't necessary.
But if you're gonna build X amount of space, like he was saying, 2 spaces per so much, or 5 spaces per so many square feet, and you build that building, that's what you gotta do, is this is gonna be what you wanna have and the code of it. You don't change it anymore just cause Mr. So-and-so comes in and thinks he's the big shot from Atlanta with a buco bunch of money and he can throw it around and make people feel, I can do anything I want. This is what you gotta stop. This is what's happening here. My other thing is, could you then make it, depending on where it is, have them put any, if they've got any commercial type stuff, you've got so many little spaces out in front, so if you've got somebody that needs to come in there and look or buy or ask questions of what they're doing, they got a place. The rest of the employees are in the back. So in
Yeah.
other words, they have to allow the room there, and still, if they're gonna be sort of like, how are they getting their equipment in? Are they gonna block the road? You know, like you get certain beer places and they got the road locked, or
Understood.
a car
Yeah.
and they got the middle
If
suicide.
businesses change, and the use changes in particular, then everything changes, all the rules change. If you've got from a restaurant to a restaurant, or a supermarket to a supermarket, that's an easy one, because all of that's the same. But if you go from a restaurant to an auto repair shop, or a restaurant to a fitness center, then the requirements change. The use changes, therefore the requirements change, and it's incumbent upon the new business owner in order to meet the
But doesn't it go
requirements.
through with the square footage that you were saying in the beginning? Am I looking at this wrong?
No, you're looking at it right, but there's multitudes, that's what I was pointing out to these guys, is that they use more than just square footage to determine the number of parking spots. In some cases, they use, for example, employees, in some cases. And sometimes they just use the square footage. Other times, they use, for example, if it's a bowling alley, how many bowling lanes they have. We actually have that in our LDRs. So they're trying to, at the end of the day, they're trying to predict how many parking spaces are required so that we have enough, so that all of the parking is on site and nothing has to be parked on the road.
On the road. So what I'm saying, if it's our main street here and you're gonna have something like that and it's gonna be a big building, can the employees park in the back?
Oh, yeah, they can.
So can that be
anywhere they wanna
also
do it.
written
Yeah,
And,
they can park wherever they,
you know,
it's their
just like,
land, yeah.
No roosters, but we got
I
roosters.
think
Yeah.
she's
you know.
suggesting, could we say that you have to put
She's saying
parking
to
in the
make
back?
them
Yeah.
park their employees in the back, which I don't think you can.
Well, there are certain rules requiring that, you know, the parking has to be shielded from public view, particularly if there
So
are.
At least it's a nice front.
Yeah, so that there are, especially in a CRA area. Matter of fact, if you look at the CRA 1, 2, and 3, it does require that they put foliage and fencing in so that the parking areas are shielded from public view. As much as you can. I mean, you don't want to start screwing up vision triangles when people are pulling out into traffic and everything, but that is a consideration.
Yeah, so can that be part and put in there now, so down the line it doesn't
That's-
have
that's in
just
there.
what we did?
That's in there already. That's CRA area. If you, it specifically identifies foliage, and it goes into great detail about how that's
Is that CRA
done.
1?
CRA 1, 2, and 3.
Oh,
Yeah.
all of them, okay.
So, but still it is, if it needs 10 parking spots and you feel sorry for the guy, cause that's a lot of parking spots, but you know what? What if he gets the employees?
Yeah.
They're covered,
Yeah,
he's covered. Now,
Yeah.
if he sells the property to somebody that puts 50 employees in there, he might have to buy another piece of property somewhere else. to
and
park
for
his-
another parking spot, that's exactly right.
Yeah, so I mean, that.
And I get what these guys are
Stop it.
saying,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
we don't wanna put more work on the city to go out and say, hey, you got 30 employees, you told us you had 20. I get that, but the thing is, it's ultimately up to them to have enough parking spaces for their employees. I'm just trying to best determine how many spaces are really needed so that we don't, you know, induce this overbuilding.
I don't think it's overbuilding, I think they would be responsible to know that this is what they've got to have, it's informing them that, no, you're
Yeah.
gonna have 10 employees, you cannot have 2 parking spots.
Well,
Let's
that's,
get real,
that's
you
what
know?
we're trying to do,
Isn't that
yeah.
what you were, Mr. Sloan, you were saying?
Yeah, I think what Mr. Robichaud was saying, Mr. Chair, is if 4 is the number for, with retail, maybe cut it to 2 without.
Without retail.
And that's a more,
I'm okay with that.
That's an
Yeah.
easier
Yeah.
position for the city to deal with
Yep.
than anything
Yeah.
else.
Yeah, so that would be, you know, and then you get them and.
That's a good compromise.
Because
Let's do
that's
it.
44 parking
Yeah.
spaces for a
If
22,000
you'd
square
like,
foot.
I can incorporate that into what
Non-retail.
we're working on.
That'd be
right now,
perfect.
Because it
It's-
applies to light manufacturing.
Yeah, and it's just an extra grid onto the existing parking, so that's good.
Yeah, so
Very
now,
good.
Before
Okay.
you over to the next
And
page,
again,
but
thanks
that's
for all the
okay.
good work you did on that, Jim. All right, where are we at on the agenda? And thank you for your comments.
Are you going to then,
Sir?
Do number 5 on the agenda.
Yeah, I'm trying to find my agenda. Here we go.
well, okay, so with regard to this parking,
Mine?
are we
Oh,
gonna?
thank you.
I need it back. but-
Well, I'll give it right back to you.
Mr. Robichaud is gonna address it.
I guess what?
So we're gonna create the.
Oh,
park-
okay.
the parking
This
issue?
was, so the item 5 was voting for chairman
He's
and
gonna
vice chairman.
address it to go to-
This actually came from Mr. Sloan, and I think you carried this over from the council members, because they wanted us. Remember, we just went ahead and swore in Mr. Haney, and I think the council members had asked Mr. Sloan to have our votes at the same time, so that's why this is. So we have to vote for, and I'll tell you this, I'm willing to do this for another year if I have your confidence.
Can I see
Uh,
that, please?
That was Mr. Sloan's, you want me
I just
Mine.
want I'm going to give it back to you, I just want to see what it says.
to?
It says voting for chairman and vice chairman position.
That's all it says?
That's all it
Oh,
says.
I
Nothing
thought you
more-
were giving
nothing
him
more
info.
detailed, no.
Okay, all right, sorry. You know me, I'm an information, I wanna know it all.
So, I am
I vote for
willing-
Mr. Riga.
Do we have to have a motion?
Yeah.
I
you
think
would-
we
I
do.
make a motion.
and
I'll second.
There you go.
So will we do a
Madam Chair, will
motion
you
for
do
the
a-
chair, and then we'll do a motion for the vice chair? Yes,
Uh,
okay.
that's what's
So we
already
vote-
in place,
okay.
so,
The chair, I have
Madam
it. Mr.
Clerk?
Haney,
Yes.
Ms. Hutto,
Yes.
Mr. Robichaud.
Yes.
Mr. Striker.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you for your confidence.
You better
Thank
take
you
it,
for
we've
your
all
confidence.
voted yes.
Okay.
Now we need to do the vice chair.
Now we-
Mr. Robichaud for vice chair. I make a motion for Mr. Robichaud for vice chair.
A second.
Outstanding. Very good.
Takes the
take a
heat
vote,
off me.
please.
Mr. Haney,
Yes.
Ms. Hutto,
Yes.
Mr. Robichaud.
Come on, you're gonna be
Can't
here
do it, can you?
anyway.
Yes.
Come on, Jim, you're good.
Mr. Stryker,
Can I say hell yes?
Okay.
Chairman Rico.
Absolutely. Congratulations, Jim. Thank you for all the great work.
Awesome.
Thanks to everybody's great work. This is not an easy thing. Okay, let's do this. Now we're in the last of this. And so Terry, let's just go around the room, see if anybody has any thoughts, comments about anything else we need to cover next time. Terry?
I'm on a little overload tonight, but no, nothing specific tonight.
Very good.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Robichaud, for all your work on the
Yes,
light
I'll wait till you see
commercial
my
thing.
bill.
I think that's, and wait till you see your bill, yeah. We appreciate it, we appreciate it.
Mr. Robichaud, anything?
I only have one other thing, and it's really not for the council. I forwarded to the clerk a suggestion for a ballot
Saw that.
that might be helpful next time the city council votes on something, because it eliminates some of the, I hope eliminates the confusion and the errors that kind of creep through that actually have a negative numerical impact when you're voting for the highest number wins.
Yeah.
So what I did, I crafted this so that you don't have to fill in numbers, you circle things, and it's easy to error check because you can only have one circle in each row and one circle in each column. And then it's a simple matter for the clerk to then.
I think
I
it
can
should
tell
just
you're
be
an engineer.
circles
You
that
like-
you
would-
like.
You like specifics.
It was really, Kim, it was really for you to, because
Crayon.
Vote yes or
you're
no.
gonna be the one that
Crayon.
kind of runs the next,
Do you want her to pass it along to the council members then for?
And he's given it to me.
Okay.
So, what you're asking is that I make it an agenda item to have a discussion on?
No,
No,
Just
no,
let them
no,
make
what
some
am I
It's an
doing with it? Am I
administrative
just
function.
passing it to them, Mr. Sloan?
I think you distribute the copy to the council members and ask them if they would like to
Take
use
a look
at
that
it.
form
Yeah.
That's what I
going
needed to hear.
forward for
Yeah.
voting on whatever.
That I will do, thank you,
Very good.
sir.
and that's it.
Mr. Haney, anything from you, sir?
Just thanks to both you guys for your vast knowledge on the city of Parker. I tell you, I'm really impressed. It's impressive what y'all can just retain and
Well, we know that
speak
you've
with.
been a past council member, so we're appreciative of having all your knowledge
This
here
is
as well.
This is a whole
And,
different pond, to be honest
That
with you.
is.
We know that you had a close family member pass away, so my thoughts and
My
prayers are with you,
condolences.
sir.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I just have one thing. Oh, Mr. Sloan, anything that you want to address? Okay.
No, sir.
Okay, I just have one thing, and I think we tried to bring this up before, but I think because oftentimes the information, I mean, all you had to do is look at the Culver thing, it was this darn thick. And I think we should probably set a rule up that developers should really get that stuff to our city clerk at least a week ahead of time.
Oh, yeah.
So, because a lot of this came in the last couple of days, and many of us still have full-time jobs, so,
Right.
at the end of the day, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, it's not, all there's other things too.
Oh,
like
this is-
just that was ready.
He was just talking about the size of the
All
culverts is.
all I'm suggesting is that sometimes, and I recognize that there are various complexities. The division of the
It
land, I
wasn't
think, was kind of an easy one. Culvers was, if you read through it, it probably took 4 or 5 hours to get through it all. At the end of the day, I think, out of the respect for the commissioners, that we have it at least 5 days ahead of time, which means that we should tell developers it's gotta be in 7 days ahead, 7 business days ahead of time, so that the clerk has a chance to upload it and send it off to us, because, we need that kind of time. And there may be a simple one that maybe the city will come to us and say, hey, it's a no-brainer, it's an easy one, simple variance check or something that's obvious. But if it's complex, I would suggest we needed to get at least 7 business days ahead of time. You guys okay
I
with
think
that
that's a
time
little
frame?
I like
request.
that.
Because-
If it just wasn't proprietary,
because-
I could see it electronically.
Yeah, that was a new one on me. I hadn't heard
would have
or
had
seen that before, but I think Carly was appropriate to bring that to us, because, she got that, and it looked pretty legalese-like, and I think Mr. Sloan was on vacation, so he was, we didn't want
Right.
to upset
It-
his vacation to
yeah.
ask him that question, so that's why we brought it to the floor.
Yeah. And
But-
because he wasn't here, that's why we chose to err on the side of
Better safe
caution.
than
Yeah.
sorry.
And that was the
It's
appropriate thing to
no
do,
harm, no
because,
foul.
last thing you wanna do is put the city in hot water because of some legalese.
I'm not going to court over something as silly as that.
Yeah,
Yeah, very good.
and that,
I'll let the clerk know after too.
okay.
Yeah.
Very good. So you guys okay with that? We just tell developers, look, if you want it to be before the planning commission, we gotta have it at least 7 business days.
Yeah.
Because if we get it 7 business days, we're not gonna get it until 4 or 5 days before. Just because of the time it takes to get the information. Carly does her analysis, and then Kim gets it and then uploads it and sends it out to us. So you okay with that 7-day minimum? That's minimum.
That's minimum.
Minimum.
I think
That's
good.
pretty much.
Friday, close of business Friday before, a week before the.
Yes, sir. That's a good way to put it. So let's go ahead and, I don't think it's something we have to, do we have to vote on this, Mr.
Well, if you're
Sloan?
gonna establish a rule, I would suggest you have it
Can't,
voted.
let's go ahead and vote on this. And unfortunately, I can give you the information. I can't motion it.
I'll say.
We may, I have no alternative at this point. After it's been primary and secondary motion, we have to vote on it. So, Madam Clerk, will you take a vote?
I will. Mr. Haney,
Yes.
Ms. Sutto,
Yes.
Mr. Robichaud,
Yes.
Mr. Stryker, Chairman Riga.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, Pat, I can,
Just a suggestion,
yes, ma'am.
incorporate that into the form.
Yes.
I don't know how old those forms are, but that way, in case somebody forgets, it's
The
on
one that
the
they fill
form.
out,
Oh,
They
yeah.
know that
Good
it's
idea.
gotta be
bring their
submitted.
stuff in or
Great idea.
I have one administrative item.
Yes, please.
It just occurred to me that I think I'm coming up on my 2-year anniversary on this august body, and I think we serve 2-year terms. Is that not true?
I think they re-voted you all in like last July, like 2 months ago.
Yeah.
Oh,
So you're,
Oh, that was, okay,
They
so
moved
everyone was
everything
voted back.
to,
where do I get my
One
acceptance
point.
speech?
yeah, sorry.
right here, right now.
You can't quit yet to be sold.
Yeah,
The clerk and I don't have to do that, but I think you're okay for right now.
Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't wanna
Yeah.
get anybody in trouble.
All I know is that the council members, when we brought Mr. Haney on board, they wanted all, like the officers and everything to be all voted
so
on at the same
everybody's
time.
7
Well,
At
that's
the
why we
same
just did the re-vote for
time
the,
every year.
for the
Did they
chairperson and the
have
vice
me
chair.
do the oath
And,
of office?
well, with that, I'm gonna go ahead and adjourn
Did
if
it when I
everybody,
saw it.
unless anybody has anything else.
Rock on.
Thank you. Good meeting, everybody. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
When I think I've got it all together, and I've not got it all together. Thank you, Pat. Footers. Yeah, I'm using Word, I'm using Adobe. What it does is when I put the footer in, the minute I go to the third page, it changes the first 3 to the one I put on the next page. I cannot figure out how
You
to.
mentioned that last month, and I thought, okay, I gotta go. But then I thought,
Oh,
well,
no,
why
that
don't I start
I
with looking
that I
at these
got.
other
Yeah,
two?
okay. Now, but this footer and this header and changing the, I tried to put varying different types of pages. Every time I put the third one in, it flips it. So frustrating. Thank you.
Whereas the guy making belts, today's got one guy making belts. Tomorrow, he got 30.
It'll be easy for Jim to just say 2. My goal, my thoughts were really twofold. We flood, blacktop is not impervious. Let's minimize that impact and try and also incorporate the concept of, we're gonna have a lot of internet-based businesses. I mean, that's, you see a lot of that going in that direction, and I was worried that we were not covering it. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Sloan.
Good night.
Good night now.
No, I mean. Did he leave? I need him.
Go call him.
F4
Don't you
is
have to tell him to go?
In that order.
Yes, ma'am.
My hoodie flew.
So the Gil Straddle,
Oh, really?
they're only here for the parcel split. We don't have an application or anything.
What if
for
I
it.
G Wild Weasel?
Oh,
So
wow,
they were
Weasel,
here
okay.
to
68
request the
percent
parcel
of
split,
Oh
and
my
I think
God,
it got,
this guy's got shit.
drowned out
Yeah.
with everyone focusing
And
on
that was,
They have no problem with the split. the
So
simple.
can they come to the council meeting next week?
I'll
to
Yes.
probably
get
just
the
leave it
final
here.
approval?
She'll
Cause
find
they're
out.
out there kind of upset, and I'm like, I told them to come here for the cluster approval, and then they can come next week to the council.
They can do that, that's
Okay,
fine.
so
Because,
like-
because
One
what
for
I
Gs, huh?
explained to them very directly.
I got a good
Yeah.
friend of
is that
mine named
there's
Lucky
nothing
Eckman.
in
You
their
probably
plans
knew
that would
him
prevent them from
because the
splitting that
105
property.
community was so
Nothing.
small.
The only thing
The
would
reason
be,
Lucky Eckman was called Lucky
I mean,
Eckman is he from like
they're gonna go to the council members, and the
350.
council members are
105
gonna
missions
say,
have never got a bullet hole in it.
1.37 acres of land,
Yeah.
I want to
He
split it
said-
into 2.67
'cause I met him
acres
many,
of
many
land,
years after
and they're gonna say,
he
no
was on
brainer.
the
Yeah, cause I
I-
told them that, anything
much
after
older
parcel
than I-
split,
I am.
okay, if
But,
it's gonna be
he
okay,
said,
then we would
he
tackle
never
the
looked
whole
at the
building,
plane when he
Yeah.
monster,
back
and like,
to base,
when they knew they
he
had
walked
to
off.
submit paperwork for that.
That's
You know, they
exactly
used
right,
to- they,
because then, that's when we
acronyms.
start looking at what are the setbacks,
YGB,
or what's the
SM,
elevation,
Yeah.
you gotta be
you know, what's the
shipping,
building gonna
because
look
their
like,
job was to go
is
out
it gonna
there
be
and-
consistent with the area?
Yeah, they were the
Does it
first
meet,
ones in
you
and
know,
last
all
ones
the
out.
codes?
And the
Um,
only guys that
but-
I
but,
had more
the
respect
split
for
of
were the
land,
Sandys that
no
did it.
brainer. And I think I told
200
them,
miles
I
an
said to
hour.
them, there's
And
nothing
they
in
would
the land
literally get
development
the
rules
hell
that
shut
would
on
prevent
the-
you from
the
doing
airplane
what
Yeah,
you
no,
wanna
you
do.
said that was fine, but I
designed
didn't know
to
if they
take
had to
small
all
arms
be
fire.
okay.
Oh,
That's
no.
all.
And I got
Oh,
a
no, we didn't
couple
have
friends
to
who
do
flew
that,
those
because
too.
they didn't, it wasn't.
I was
even
merely a
formally
second
on the
lieutenant.
agenda As an agenda item,
only second
it was
lieutenant.
actually, and so it didn't even require a vote. Because the only thing that have to come before, here, let me show you something real fast.
No, and the thing that I was talking about with Mr. Robichaud is on the website, it's one thing if you put a rendering like, coming soon, Culver's, or the rendering of their building. I'm talking about the actual site plans that I print out that has all the measurements.
Oh, okay.
I think that part shouldn't be on the website. I think, when he showed you that picture of the front of the building,
Yeah.
I never received that, but that would be okay. But to me, the actual, dissecting of the,
Hey, we're still streaming. I'm gonna.
the dissecting, I'm not saying anything bad.
Yeah.
Dissecting of the building, I don't think that should